Hello and welcome to The Blueprint presented by Lightstorm. The one-day event unveiled its vision for the future of network as a service and brought together leaders and innovators to understand the potential of network as a service in India's digital landscape. We have a thought leadership presentation on India's digital landscape by Puneet Kumar, MD of SteadView. Let's take a look.
We are a very young country. We are probably the only country that will have 100 million plus people joining the workforce in the next decade. Democratize digital adoption. What that means is, in a country like India, if only top 100 million people have access to everything, then honestly, that's not democratic at all. But today in India, on almost every metric in digital adoption, you see a broad-based adoption. The key example I always take is, like, my family lives in a village. My mom is complete illiterate. How is she interacting with technology? The amount of data she's generating and consuming is really an indicator of where the country is in the evolution of its journey. We are still in very early days of adoption. And what I mean by that is, like, B2C commerce in India is probably one of the lowest in terms of adoption curve, or whether it's B2B commerce or online food delivery. So we have a long runway, and there are two tailwinds we are riding. The first one is the discretionary consumption will grow, and the second is penetration will grow. Thank you.
Up next, we have a keynote address on the evolution of network as a service in the Indian market by Amarjeet Gupta, Group CEO and MD of Lightstorm. Let's take a look.
We don't imagine we're a big brand, known brand, particularly like the B2C companies, but we imagine we're doing something very crucial, both for the digital infrastructure in the country, as well as for enterprises whom you represent in this room. Lightstorm is a 4-year-old company. We were incubated and born in January of 2020. We are capitalized by a large institutional fund from the US. We are founded by a bunch of people who have worked in tech for a while. And we think we are building an infrastructure over here which will stand its test in time. Just a state of affairs, we today operate in about 6 countries and about 1,000 people. Like I said, we are well capitalized. We don't state our financials, but we're extremely proud to say we make money. This story about unveiling a blueprint for future-proof networking is a very personal story. It's an intimate story, where I had the lucky privilege of being at the vantage point of seeing how cloud and software industry grew for the enterprise, and how connectivity grew, mostly for the consumers, but not so much for the enterprise. And that really is the genesis of Lightstorm and what we are doing. Like most tech stuff, it starts with a little bit of a haze, where everybody's definition of what is SDN is one hell of a maze. I call it the blind man and the elephant. So depending on whom you speak to, NaaS is a different definition. Some would call him, hey, it's just a managed service. I'll manage in the scales and capacity out for you, Mr. CIO or CDO. And you have a fungible network. Others would call it a self-service platform. I talked about the entire cycle of discovery to provisioning being in your hands rather than the service provider. And that's self-service, and possibly a little bit of ability to look at the network as if it were their own, like a glass plane. Some others would actually call what I call a band fix, which is look at existing networks, example MPLS networks, which most enterprises use, put a software instance on top of it, and try and make it a little smart, just about a little. And that's called the hybrid patch-up. We, as a young company, had no option. We couldn't build a network which was like any of the others who have been building it for 50 years. We rode this curve with a smart set of engineers. We scouted the world around, not just in India, with Australia, with Stanford University, with Estonia, and picked together the best code to create a set of products, which we'll talk about during the day, which is, we think, a grand first step for NaaS. Thank you for your attention.
Next up is a presentation on the Lightstorm Global Portfolio by Prasanna C, Global Head of Product at Lightstorm. Let's dive in and take a closer look.
Today, the applications are born in the cloud, be it private or public. They are managed full lifecycle in the cloud instances, and they retired there. So the center of gravity has really shifted from the branch. So the network, the heavy lifting part of the network is now on the top. And that is where Lightstorm is focused about. So the branch that you see here is more about just a lightweight, small links, 10 Mbps, 20 Mbps links, just to suffice your brick and mortar business. Right? You just need a reliable internet connectivity or a DIA connectivity coming out of the branch. But the core part of the network that powers this engine, your business, around data centers, DC, DR, and public and private clouds. All of this is only possible in particularly the emerging markets, only if you have a network that is built for the cloud, the scalability and the demands and the rigor of the cloud, a network that is built for the enterprises in today's context, not just about the product and technology, but also about the customer experience. Now, we keep mentioning this word network fabric, right? And in this whole event, you wouldn't hear us talking about MPLS, you wouldn't hear us talking about internet services and all of that. Because that, we believe, is not going to enable the platform, it is not going to enable the cloud, it's not going to enable the enterprise for the demands of tomorrow. So what is the network fabric that matters? For us, our definition, a NaaS fabric should allow a customer to be able to create a network as you want. Think of it as a DIY setup, a do-it-your-own setup. If you want, you can just log into a system, a portal. You can create a point-to-point network. You can connect your DC, your DR, be done with it. Let's say tomorrow your needs grow. You started going multi-cloud, right? You started running some applications on one cloud platform, some others on AWS, Oracle, etc. You shouldn't wait for 6 to 8 weeks to turn up the network to plumb all of this together. But through a true NaaS platform, you can take your existing network that is already set up. You can simply start adding location endpoints into your network fabric. That is what we mean by a true NaaS fabric.
Let's listen to industry experts delve into the topic of connecting the dots, why India and the world need a global network fabric now.
Can you break down and define NaaS for our audience in a more easier, non-technical way, if I may say so?
So cloud-based approach is considered to be the easiest way of provisioning. And NaaS is also a cloud-based approach wherein the user is empowered. The user is empowered to manage the network and also attain the outcomes actually out of that actually. So this is clearly what I would say is network as a service is from a networking point of view.
So when an online payment happens, the delays can make somebody quite act weird in a weird manner. How important is security and then reliability in the network infrastructure?
So what ideally happens with a financial transaction, whether you're making a payment or you're withdrawing cash from the ATM, the transaction side flows like that. It first hits the data center in which the application is hosted, maybe the bank's own data center. Once the transaction is completed, the data center holds a copy of the transaction and forwards the transaction to a near DR, a near side DR. The transaction is first written at the near side DR database, synchronously copied back to the live database or the production database, post which a customer gets an acknowledgement that your transaction is through. So you can see the amount of transactions and hops it has to go through, and each and every step that security, reliability, and availability, or performance, let me use that word, is important, right? Now just imagine that a transaction has to hit a data center, go to the cloud, get written somewhere, come back, go back to the aggregator and go to the customer. A minimum 5 to 6 hops in less than, you said delay, right? Possibly less than a millisecond that has to move, right? So that's the sort of performance and reliability that we look at, right? And here it is very important that you have a very reliable something that India was missing till now. Lightstorm has come and put in their efforts, and I think this will grow. Does the customer look at when he is doing such a transaction? I coined this term somewhere during the COVID. I call it the SST. Speed, simplicity, and trust. If you cannot deliver that, nothing works, period.
I mean, Cloudflare operates in different geographies. So where do you see the broader picture of global connectivity unveiling?
Organizations have users around the world, like many of the brands listed on the screen have increasingly like Indian like Postman. Postman's used by developers with APIs all over the world, and so there are a growing number of born in India companies with users around the world, and so as they solve connectivity issues both for their own organizations but also for their customers' organizations, they have to be solved in a way that's inherently global. But telecoms are inherently regional. But the connectivity problem is inherently global, and so that's why things like network as a service make a lot of sense. I think we're finding that it's hard to find an organization that doesn't have employees that are global. It's hard to find an organization that doesn't have applications that are distributed, and so there's. Just that it's inherently a global problem, and so I would be skeptical of anything which sort of solves today's problem but isn't set up to solve tomorrow's problem.
Moving on, we have an exclusive product launch, Polarin Hybrid and Multi-Cloud Connectivity. Let's take a look.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Raghav Kathuria, and I'm here to talk about hybrid and multi-cloud connectivity via Polarin. Today, enterprises are moving very rapidly with multi-cloud and hybrid cloud strategies. Now, with this trend and transformation, multiple challenges come hand in hand. The challenges like unscalable and inflexible network solutions, time-consuming connectivity to cloud and data centers, limitations on MPLS bandwidth availability, high cloud egress charges when connected via public internet, and cloud-to-cloud connectivity in traditional setup always require some sort of backhauling to physical equipment. All of these challenges can be easily addressed by a software-defined network-as-a-service platform called Polarin. Polarin offers cloud-like scalability with a variety of bandwidths and an end-to-end automation connectivity straight to your cloud environment. Enterprises can connect multiple cloud environments in a click of a button via virtual router at an optimized egress cost. For the demo purpose, I'll be connecting this multi and hybrid cloud architecture, where I'll be connecting my data center at Sifir Abale and my two cloud environments, AWS Asia Pacific region, Mumbai, and Oracle India West Mumbai region, via virtual router placed at GPX Mumbai. This complex architecture that you're seeing on the screen can be set up in 4 simple steps. First, we provision a virtual router at GPX Mumbai. Second step is we create the port at the data center and connect it to the virtual router via a virtual connection. Third, we create the virtual connection between AWS and virtual router. And fourth, we create the virtual connection between Oracle and the virtual router. As we create the links between virtual router, multiple clouds, and the data centers, all of these links get updated as the pictorial representation just to have the view of the network. So it gets updated on the real-time basis. Like in this section, you can see that virtual router is being connected to Oracle, AWS, and the port, which is at Sifir Abale. You can see that all the links are configured, and Oracle is live already. So you can see that in just 4 simple steps, I'm able to create the complex hybrid and multi-cloud environment, keeping virtual router as my hub. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aditi Mishra, and today I'll be presenting Polarin Global DCI. I'll start with a use case here. So the use case that we covered for today is called DC to DC connection. When I'll be provisioning a link from Mumbai right to LA, that will be done just in 4 simple steps. Here, I've selected the country as India, as I'll be selecting a port in India, in Mumbai. I select a bandwidth, I select a subscription term, I select a payment type. We give different options here for selecting different payment terms and payment types here. And here, I'll be selecting a location, suppose say core site LA1. So here you will see that I've selected an A end, and now I'll select the B end for the same connection. The third step is actually linking 2 of the ports. And how do I do that? I just quickly give a name for the connection I'll be creating here. And within 3 steps, I've actually created 2 ports, a connection, and I quickly select a billing profile here. I agree with my master services agreement, and I hit order. Once I hit order, you'll see that my ports are connected, my virtual connection is created, and I'll be quickly seeing the statuses of all my products going to configured and live. So thank you all. This will be from my end.
Moving on, we have an exclusive product launch, Polarin DCI Wave. Let's take a closer look.
Today I'll be talking about Polarin DCI Wave. So typically the traditional challenges are complex and lengthy provisioning, on an average more than 4+ weeks. Lack of visibility into performance metrics and utilization, inflexible networks and lengthy feasibility checks, and time-consuming troubleshooting and solution. Now, on the right-hand side, you can clearly see the Polarin DCI Wave advantage, India's first truly NaaS platform for 10G connectivity on optical layer, with rapid turnaround time from weeks to even minutes. Built-in visibility into network performance like flaps and latency. And I would like to mention that we are the first industry to publicly advertise the flap performance, nowhere seen in the industry before. You can subscribe to multiple 10G circuits, providing superior flexibility and scalability, all this through a single platform.
So while we're waiting for this service to go live, I'll probably explain the steps that happens in the backend. For many of you who are probably from the technology space, you might understand that this is a service that is provisioned directly on the fiber optical layer. Right? So you have the optical network, and you have the DWDM, you have the spectrum, the wavelengths, and all of that. So typically, when a service is created across multiple cities, you have to switch from one network to the other, which typically needs an engineer to go switch cards and patch them back to back to make a service live on an optical network. So what is happening over here is a robotic arm is actually programmed to select the right frequencies to be programmed on the fiber, and then it figures out the available wavelength on the network and maps it onto the path. So this process, while on a packet network, you can actually deliver it on the fly. Under a minute, you can have a service done. This optical network also needs to be designed for the scalability so that people can also deploy high-speed networks, not just on small bandwidths, but today with data explosion and all of that, high-speed networks are inevitable in the future. So a NaaS is not just defined for just small bandwidths of 50 MB and 100 MB and 1 gigs, but you can even push the limits like what we have done with the case of high-speed networks.
Up next, we have a panel discussion on the topic of beyond wires and nodes, the code of connectivity and the players driving innovation. Let's take a look.
Rishi, since you have been from the industry, and you have been hearing us all the while talking about NaaS, about network, and all of that, what do you see is the overarching trend that is driving a lot of these changes in the industry?
I see right now going forward how the NaaS ecosystem will evolve. What would be the next driver for that, right? What will trigger next wave of evolution? AI is going to be a big disruptor. When I used to go as an RF planner and optimization engineer to change the tilt of an antenna, I used to physically go with the rigger and get it done over the network. Like with AI now, what Rakuten is doing for the last 2 years is remotely the AI engine decides how much tilt of the antenna needs to be done. So there's an optical remote antenna tilt, and it varies during the day as well, depending on the traffic. So that's the level of disruption that AI has done to the telecom networks here. Coming to the enterprise side of the network again, AI will play a very big role when it comes to orchestration of the network, provisioning of the network, and kind of monitoring, analyzing, and then actually optimizing and automating the network. So this is where I would see the next growth engine for NaaS services would come up. So and that's how I see the overall ecosystem, how it has evolved, and this is going to be the next driver for the next option.
So Premal, from an Oracle perspective, how do you see the role of networks, right? Because network and clouds not just coexist, they are deeply interconnected at the hip level.
If you're talking about the infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, they're deploying cloud models, not just say in the Oracle public cloud, but for example, sometimes for regulatory reasons, they want certain parts of the cloud in their own data centers behind the firewall, possibly because it's something that the regulator wants, and therefore we have elements of the cloud or part of the cloud deployed in a customer environment in the data center. So getting that network and connectivity is important. The whole point about the cloud is speed and agility. If you are able to do that and connect all of this with a high speed, low latency network is imperative for certain use cases which otherwise, maybe are not even going to be feasible. And then we have got partners like Lightstorm who can allow us to integrate this with the rest of the ecosystem, wherever it may be.
So Bikash, what would you like to share with the audience about Telstra's programmable network, TPN, and how do you see a NaaS platform like what we have done, and where do you see the industry is going with respect to a market like India?
Way back in 2016, having a data center in most part of the world was a difficult task. You leave Singapore and Europe out of the equation, you can't get a space. And those are not data centers, they were carrier hotel operated by some of the incumbent, and you are basically bounded by the rules and regulation. When I tested this sandbox or whatever the product you call today, the layer 1 has its own challenges. When you are provisioning a layer 2, it's easy. You have a VRF, you provision an IP, the network is resilient enough to take all the care of everything. But when you go and do a deep dive on layer 1, which we call dumb pipes, and that's what our organization business is, we connect receive with Premal, connecting consumer with the cloud, and that's what is our role.
This particular event was really an eye-opener because there were some key elements of how a speed and the time to get a service on a network. That is a key element because understanding of a network trying to get into place from an ops or a business standpoint, it is always that, oh, it's going to take 6 months. But I think this event was an eye-opener. There were some demonstrations that were done that was really something that was very magical in nature. That gives me a confidence that as a business or the operations guy from the banking industry can really rely on infrastructure and such services. Because today we have that offering provided by Lightstorm.
I think it was a pretty engaging event. Deeply covering the topics around network as a service. The demos were pretty interesting, and it kind of demonstrated the capability of the platform that network as a service can offer. We have experienced Lightstorm not only in terms of efficient services, but also they're pretty, I would say, affordable on the commercials, right? And aggressive commercials with efficient deliveries definitely brings a lot of advantage to an enterprise.
NaaS solution has been at the core, I think, and the pandemic started back in 2020. So that would have time in the NaaS adoption was roughly less than 1%, as I mentioned, the final there. So Gartner predicts that it will reach 50% by the end of 2024. And maybe more that as well. So I think there's a lot of work that happened in the last overall NaaS ecosystem. But what is going to be triggered for the growth for the next phase of growth of NaaS is going to be how innovative services are provisioned and the driver on the network. So when I say innovative, things like AI, how AI can be leveraged in terms of monitoring analyzing and optimizing the networks, right? To automate the networks, configuration and everything. So I think that's what we quite a lot of something how enterprise connectivity or managed enterprise connectivity is going to hire.
So Telstra has been one of the few privileged users who got access to the sandbox, and it thrilled us because in our business, people tend to hide the information from the consumer for any reason, especially the SLA credit and all. But Lightstorm has been open enough. We can give you the access to your real-time traffic utilization, the latency metrics. Anything and everything is available on a portal, just on a click on a mouse. So that has really bring a lot of trust because we know that how the network is performing on a real-time basis. And ultimately, it has also helped Lightstorm because we never raised a complaint in the last 3 years, right? If you look onto your history, Telstra could not get an opportunity to register a complaint because whatever problem we wanted to, whatever question we wanted to ask, it's a little on the move. So here, Polarin and Sandboxes are great too. Keep doing good work, man.